babe, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another nail tutorial where this week I'm gonna show you guys just how simple it can be to do your own acrylics at home. I'm going to do my left hand and show you all 5 fingers, a different shape, a different length. That way you can know what you would like to do in the comfort of your home, because it really can be possible if you just believe. I am a huge advocate for people doing their nails in the comfort of their home. Unless you know the salon you go to is great. They're super clean, super lovely people, and they do a great job. Continue to go to the salon once they open. For others who are used to going to cheap nail salons, I definitely encourage you to learn to do your own nails at home. You can buy a lot of nail products from Sally's, online retailers, lots of places, and it's really not that hard to learn if you just give yourself a little bit of patience and a little bit of grace in the meantime. Enough of the chit chat, let's just dive right into this acrylic at home nail tutorial. Let's get into a couple equipment and products that we need to start our acrylic manicure at home. So for me personally, I use the Young Nails brand. I use their nail liquid, which is called Monomer, and I use their nail powder in Speed Clear, which is also called Polymer. And then I also use Young Nails Protein Bond, which is basically just a primer. Let's talk brushes. You need a brush in order to do acrylic nails. Brushes come in a wide range of sizes, shapes. As you can see here, I have 3 different sizes. This is a 12, 10, and an 8. I relatively stick with a 10. That's kind of like my everyday go-to brush for multiple size nails. If someone had larger nail beds or wanted much longer nails, I would probably use a size 12 because it's much bigger, so it's gonna pick up more product. Where if someone had small nails, I might use a size 8 because it's gonna pick up less product. You get the point. So before you start applying acrylic to yourself, I do recommend practicing getting the right consistency of your pearl. So a pearl is when you pick up some liquid and then dab it into the powder, it's going to create a pearl. So that's what I mean by pearl. It's the pearl that you're picking up from the product, or the bead, whatever you want to call it. To get a good pearl that'll last long for your acrylic nails, you want to have a good ratio between liquid and powder. It's about 50-50. You do not want to have less liquid by draining out your brush against the side of your dapping dish, grabbing product, because it's going to be really dry and it's just not going to last well for this manicure. It's just going to be really hard to work with. It's going to dry quickly, so don't drain too much liquid out. You also don't want your brush to be sopping wet of liquid, because then when you dip it into the powder, it's going to be so liquidy, it's going to be runny, it's going to take longer to dry. That's why we want to have that happy medium somewhere in between, to about 50% liquid, 50% powder. That's where I recommend practicing making beads. Probably get a cheaper product in the beginning so that way you're not wasting expensive product, and just practice making beads. Practice getting that ratio right, and practice getting the same size bead or pearl every single time. So the more you do this, the more you'll feel comfortable once you start applying the product onto your nail plate. As you can see, that first bead is already dried because we didn't have enough liquid. The second bead is still extremely shiny because we had too much liquid, where these beads, they're all the same ratio and they're all drying at the same speed because we have that 50-50 liquid to powder ratio. What I like to do to get the perfect ratio is I really soak my brush in, make sure there's no bubbles coming up, and as I'm coming up, I just drag one side of my brush up the side of the dapping dish, not multiple times, just one time, and then I tap 3 times into my powder, and then I usually get the same bead with a good ratio every time. This is going to prevent any lifting, because with a super wet bead, it's going to flood your cuticle and your sidewalls, which will be harder to file, which will then create lifting. If you have a dry bead, it's going to be harder to work with, stiff, which could then also create lifting. So you really want to work hard at trying to get that perfect balance between the liquid and the powder and the size beads. Repetition for these types of things is really key. Over time you will get better. Just have a lot of patience with yourself, and that's why I recommend to practice before you actually do it on yourself or someone else. Now we're going to talk about zones. This is kind of an important part of doing acrylics because you need to know the zones of the nail. Starting with zone 1, that would be the free edge area of the nail plate. So your extension that you're applying with your tip, with your form, whatever you're using for acrylics. Today we're going to be using tips. Zone 2 would be the center of the nail plate, which is where we want to make sure we have the most durable apex possible. That way our nails are stronger and last longer for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And zone 3 would be the cuticle area, which is our last zone that we will be working on. Zone 3 is where people tend to get the most lifting, so we want to focus on that area towards the end of building our nail. That way we can get a precise line as close to the cuticle but not flooding the cuticle. Also, if someone has much smaller nails, you might only need 2 zones, but majority of the time I just kind of remember the 3 zones rule while applying acrylics. So now let's get started actually applying acrylic to our nails in the comfort of our home. First things first, you guys already know, just like any other manicure that we do at home, we want to prep our nail. We want to cut our nails, file them, do our cuticle work, buff them, really get them all cleaned up. That way we have a really nice prepped surface for our acrylic to lay on top of. Next, we are going to measure our tips. If you watched my Gelix tutorial, you'll kind of have an idea. This is a little bit similar, where we don't want our tip to be larger than our nail or smaller. We want to try to get an exact fit to our natural nail as possible. Now we're going to glue those pre-measured tips to our free edge. You don't want to glue it more than 1/4 of your nail plate. Hold it tight until you feel that it's firm enough, and I also like to apply a drop of glue right onto the seam on top just for extra security. And if I notice that my natural nail naturally curves down and the glue didn't attach the tip towards the front of my nail, I'll apply a drop of glue from underneath my nail under that tip as well. Once they're all dried and secured, we can start cutting and shaping our nail. This is a tip cutter. It just easily punches the tip out, and we're going to cut it to a size that we like. You can also use scissors or nail clippers, whatever you have on hand. I also use stiletto tips and square tips depending on the shape that I'm doing. Most of the time I like to use stiletto tips, but if I'm doing a tapered square or a narrow coffin, I like to use a really nice square tip, so that way they're really sharp on the sides. And when I do those shapes, I take my straight edge clippers and I just slightly cut at an angle on my sides to give it that really tapered, narrow, free edge appearance. And I really do love the way they turn out by doing this method. Then you're just going to file your tips as if you were filing your nails in the shape that you want them to be. We're gonna go over stiletto, the tapered square or narrow coffin, the ballerina, which is also another form of a coffin shape, almond, and round today. When filing for a stiletto, I do want to make sure that I keep my nail file as parallel and vertical to my free edge as possible. I don't want any bowing underneath, so if I notice that my free edge is bowing on the sides, I will take my nail file and get under there as well to keep it as straight as possible. And I also, for stiletto, file them to be really sharp, because we're going to have to file them again and then we're going to be buffing again. So it's going to dull throughout the service. Keeping it as sharp as possible in the beginning is going to keep it sharp towards the end of the acrylic manicure. As we go into the tapered square coffin shape, you can see that little bit of bowing because we're not filing underneath quite yet. So I'm just going to take my file and directly file almost underneath the tip to get it straight, just like right there. So as you can see, it's bowing, and I'm just going to place the file underneath to get it really straight and really sharp. As for my free edge, it does have to be straight. It's not at a point like the stiletto. So I'm going to run my file in different directions and look at my nail from different directions to see if it's straight. This is a key, whether you're doing nails on yourself or anybody else, is to look at the nail in all different directions when you're filing, when you're shaping, when you're forming, anything you're doing. Look at it in different directions to see if it looks straight, if it looks even, because because any way you look, it could look differently one way versus the other way. As for the ballerina, the almond, and the round, the way I shape those is I basically shape them the same way I did the stiletto nail, but obviously for the ballerina, we're going to have a flat top versus a point. So the ballerina, the reason it's not considered the coffin in my opinion is because it kind of curves at the free edge, just like a ballerina shoe, and then it's straight at the top. Where the coffin slash tapered square, it's extremely straight and extremely flat on the top, you know, just like this. I'll kind of shape my sidewalls just as if I'm doing a stiletto tip and just really flatten out that top. And same thing for almond, I'll shape it just like a stiletto tip, except instead of keeping it sharp at the top, I'll kind of round it out just a little bit, just so it gives it that natural almond nut shape. And same thing for round, I'll shape the sides just like how I did the stiletto, except I'm going to completely round out that free edge. I'm not going to give it a point. I'm just going to keep it completely circular throughout the entire nail. Next up, we're going to take our drill bit and we're going to use a sanding band to really even out the lifted area of the nail tip. That way our natural nail to the nail tip is flowing to one smooth nail. Obviously, it's not going to be completely parallel and flat with each other, but we want to make sure it's smooth. It doesn't have that lip from the nail tip. So we're just going to buff it to get it as smooth as possible, and I'm just going to scratch up the entire nail tip while I'm here, and just use your finger to feel if it feels smooth. And once you feel that it feels smooth enough, you don't feel that thick lip anymore, then you're finished. Next up, we're going to clean our nail plate of any debris just using alcohol or acetone, whatever you have on hand. And we're going to use our Young Nails primer. When I learned acrylics, I was taught to use this primer twice. I don't prime one time, I actually prime the natural nail twice. We're going to apply primer to our natural nail area. We don't have to prime the tip because it's plastic, so the acrylic is automatically going to stick to plastic. But we're going to apply it to where the natural nail is, but you don't want to flood the cuticle or the sidewalls because that could cause lifting while you're applying your acrylic, because it's all going to kind of blend into one mess and we don't want that. So just make sure you're getting the primer just on the natural nail and do it twice. I do it twice, that's how I was taught. If you want to do it once, go for it. Again, creature of habit over here.
Guilty.
Once we are all cleaned and primed, we are ready to apply our acrylic. So remember, we practiced our pearl sizing and our pearl consistency. So once you've got that down, you'll be good to go and start giving yourself an acrylic manicure. A key tip when doing acrylics and applying your beads is to have your nails at a 45 to a 90 degree angle. That way, when you apply your beads, gravity is doing a lot of the work. Gravity will naturally have that pearl slide down the free edge. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the belly of your brush, which is kind of like the zone 2 of your brush. You're going to use that and just naturally work side to side, guiding your pearl down to your free edge. Because gravity's pulling it down, let gravity do most of the work for you. We're just going to help guide it in the meantime, so that way it's not spilling on the left side more than the right side, or vice versa. So first things first, you're going to apply a large bead in zone 2. This is going to help create a strong, durable apex, because we're going to go over zone 2 again later. As you form zone 2 and it starts to harden and it's in a place that you like it, you can place a bead on zone 3. So this is the cuticle. This is where I personally like to use smaller brushes because we want to be as precise as possible with our pearls. That way they're not flooding that cuticle or those sidewalls. And we're going to again let gravity do its thing, and we're just going to use the belly of our brush and guide it down towards the free edge. As you can see, it's probably building our apex more because we went from zone 2 to zone 3, adding more product right towards that zone 2. If you didn't get enough product from zone 2 or zone 3 down to your free edge, meaning your apex or your cuticle area is a little bit thicker than your free edge, then apply another pearl to zone 1. What I like to do is when I apply to zone 1, instead of letting gravity go downwards, I'll probably go the opposite direction, so that way it creates an even flow from the cuticle to the apex, creating a little peak, and then back down to the free edge. We want it all to be one fluid motion. Obviously, you're probably not going to do amazing your first couple of times. Over time, you will get better, but when shaping your nails with acrylic, the better you shape your pearls and the better you shape the nail, the less filing and shaping you will have to do once it's dried. So that's just something to keep in mind. So if you're doing it too thick, you're probably going to have to file it more if you didn't want them to look thick to begin with. And you're just going to continue to do this with all of your nails, focusing on each zone, starting with 2, 3, and then 1. And sometimes, like I said earlier, you might only need 2 zones. Like my pinky nail is significantly smaller, so I'm probably only going to need to use 2 beads, 2 zones for my pinky nail. Before we start filing, we're going to have to make sure that our nails are completely dry, which I just get something to tap it, and you can hear it sounds really, really hard. You'll hear the difference when it's completely dry versus when it's still a little bit wet. In case we had any product flood towards our sidewalls or our free edge, I just like to separate my skin from that product, and then we're just basically going to reshape our nails exactly how we shaped our tips. Remember, I like to keep my stilettos as sharp and pointy as possible because we're going to buff them after this as well. But just go through all of your nails, basically reshaping them, making sure they look extremely sharp on the free edge. I also sometimes like to take my hand file and I'll kind of buff down the sides just to get rid of any bulkiness. That way it'll help eliminate me using my drill, because hand filing those edges might just be a little bit easier than using your drill. Now let's get into drill bits. There are a number of drill bits that you can use, that you can purchase. You know, they just come in so many shapes and sizes, colors, it's infinite. But there's things like a safety bit, which has a rounded edge so that way you don't cut yourself or cut anyone else. There's also ceramic drill bits, which are supposed to retract less heat to the nail. There's also cone bits. This is my bit of choice when using acrylics, where they're kind of tapered at the end. Then there's also barrel bits, which are a little bit scary looking. I mean, you can see the difference between a barrel bit and a cone bit, that it's just really bulky and it looks really sharp at the end. And I have actually cut someone using a barrel bit. Mind you, it was like my first couple of times doing acrylics and I wasn't super drill educated yet, but man, I butchered up this girl's finger and I felt so bad. Oh my god, I felt so bad, and I was like, this, I cannot do acrylics. Moving on to shaping the nail with a drill, I do prefer to use a cone bit because it's naturally tapered at the top. It's going to give me a really precise, clean cuticle area, and I tend to drill at an angle. So I'm holding my nail and I'm naturally putting my drill not completely parallel. I'm kind of naturally at an angle. I don't know if that's just me personally, that's just how I ended up drilling when I started doing this. So having that angle at the top helps me because I drill at an angle. That's really confusing. I'm so sorry. When you're ready to start shaping your nails, I like to just run my cone drill bit around my cuticle area. That way it's really flush with my cuticle area, meaning my natural nail. Then you just start shaping. Shaping is really 100% preference. Every nail tech shapes a little bit differently. For example, with my tapered square coffin nail, I like my free edge to be a little bit thicker because I just like the way it looks more, where some people might like it to really slant down the free edge so it's thinner at the free edge. It's just your personal preference. My stiletto tip and my almond tip, I'll probably like them to be a little bit more sloped down. That way it just naturally all comes down to a point, if that makes sense. But some techs might not like it that way. So it's really 100% preference how you want to shape the nail once you're shaping it. Mainly what I like to do is just get rid of any lumpiness. If you added a bunch of pearls versus like 1 or 2 smooth pearls, you might have a little bit of lumps in there. So just run your finger through it multiple times, feeling for any dents or lumps, and that way you'll know, oh, I feel a lump towards the left side, I gotta rework that side with my drill a little bit more. You can also just use a hand file. It just might take you a little bit longer, but whatever you have, just go with it. You can do it have faith in yourself, because I promise you, you can do it. After I've completely shaped my nails, then I'm going to just run my buffer through them just to really smooth out the nail plate so I don't have any really prominent scratches from my drill or from my hand file. Also, I like to run my buffer underneath the free edge of my nail to get rid of any like flyaways, is what I like to call them. You know, when you put your hair up and you have like little flyaways, sometimes you get little like pieces of nail that hang from the bottom. So if you run your buffer under the free edge, it'll help get rid of those. Also, you can use your buffer to soften your point on your stiletto if it's too sharp for you, or your almond, you can use it to really soften the tip of your almond, stuff like that. Once you are all shaped, all filed, all prepped to go, then I just head over to the sink with a hand brush. I do not like to use soap. Some techs will tell you to use soap. I don't like to, because sometimes soap gets stuck in there and it'll affect your polish. So I just say use water and really run that brush through your cuticle and underneath your free edge, all over, to just really get rid of any of that excess debris and make sure they're completely dry once you're done rinsing them. So there you have it. You have a full set of acrylics, which you can then polish however you see fit. I always apply gel polish on top of my acrylics because I just like the way it looks and it lasts a lot longer than regular polish. Whatever you do though, you do not have to apply a base coat. All I do is I just dehydrate my nail with acetone or alcohol, whatever you have, and then I just apply one coat of primer, the same primer I used on my natural nail. I'll use it on my artificial nail, which is the acrylic that we just built. Then I'll apply 2 coats of my gel polish. Today I will be using C&D's blue eyeshadow color. I like it because it's a little bit kind of transparent, and we're gonna do a design today where I'm going to make clouds. I'm going to use Young Nails Mission Control Gel in the shade White. What you're going to do is you're going to just draw 3 little bumps, just like the top of a cloud, and I just take kind of an old raggedy brush that kind of has bristles going everywhere, and I just use that to tap it lightly to kind of blend it down so it kind of looks like a real cloud. You know what I'm saying? If you need to go back and redefine your bumps so they look more like clouds versus mountains, then just go back and run your white liner through the top to really define those curves in the clouds. I also like to add some glitter. You know, I love glitter. So here I added a little bit of Light Elegance in the shade Crystal, just sporadically through the nail, not all over the entire nail, to give it like that starry appearance. And then you just top it with your favorite top coat. Mine's Koopa's non-wipe top coat. Add your cuticle oil because we all know those phalanges are looking really dehydrated. So lube them up, girl, and voila, we have cloud acrylic nails that we can do in the comfort of our home. So as you can see, we have stiletto. It's still pretty pointy, it's still pretty sharp. We have our tapered square, aka coffin. I like to think of this shape as like the Insta baddie nail. A lot of nail techs that are popular on Instagram do this sort of shape, so it's a very popular shape. I think it's really nice. Then we have our ballerina shape. I noticed this shape tends to be more popular with older clientele. I don't know why, but it just is for some reason. That's when we discovered there's a difference between coffin and ballerina coffin. And then there's almond, which is also my personal favorite. I just like it because it's not as pointy as the stiletto, and I just think it looks really elegant. And then we have round. But yeah, that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was probably super freaking long. Oh my god, so much editing for me, but I hope it's worth it for you, because it's worth it for me to show you guys how to do nails in the comfort of your home. Because again, it is super possible. If you just put your mind to it, you can do it. You can do it, babe. So why not? Just do it. Today's video shout out goes to Geek Static Crafts. So shout out to you, babe. Thank you so much for watching wherever you are. And if you want to be next week's video shout out, all you got to do is make sure you're subscribed, comment down below, and if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Give it a thumbs up for all of you guys who are possibly going to start doing acrylics or gelics or other at-home tutorials in the comfort of your home. But yeah, that's it for this week's video. I will see you guys all next week for next week's video. Until next time, so long and farewell, my babes. Bye!